that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 427th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
The amazing Tom Fennell. There is something kind of amazing about Tom Fennell because he is a genuine philanthropist. Okay, every day I get to the news, look through the news for items on energy and climate change. I find perhaps 15 stories. If I can't, I'll do a few less. I put them together. Each one gets a synopsis and a link to the original article, and they go up at my website, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. Tom and I do perhaps 21 stories a week, 3 for each day. And on Thursday mornings or Thursday afternoons now, since we aren't working in the studio, we have a show put together for Brattleboro Community Television, BCTV. And if you find that we're talking about interesting stories, you can go to the website, geoharvey.com, or you can go to various forums that are posted in the same place as the video, where you can download or refer to the article, a place where you can see the actual, what I call a script. It's not a script, but Tom has something to say. I know he always does.
Well, I might as well read what the cover.
Well, you always talk about how some of these are really good.
Yeah, well, if I run across some of them that impress me, I will try and call out people's attention. And there is one coming up that I think is almost mandatory.
Okay.
So we'll start with this one and say solar plus battery project has a Victorian town on target for 100% renewables.
Yeah. This picture, by the way, is a picture of a horse-drawn vehicle in a town.
Those things are, they're horses. Huh?
They're horses. I originally thought they might have been zebras, but I couldn't find the stripes. And, it's just one of those things.
Maybe they're in disguise.
I think that's what it is. Either that or it's there's one of those, each one of them has one of those horse suits that's got 2 people in it. This is in Yakandanda, Victoria, where the story is taking place. And I just happened to come across this photograph, and I thought it was a nice photograph of the area. Yakandanda is a small town in northeast Victoria. It's one step closer to being powered by 100% renewable energy, with the state's first behind the meter community-owned solar PV and battery energy storage system added to the community's power generation strategy. So it sounds like this town has actually got a microgrid going.
That's exactly what it's got. This is a wonderful idea.
Oh yeah, we should do this. We really should. Every community should be doing
every
something.
Every community should do something like this.
If every community had something like this, the business of widespread power outages would simply stop it happening.
Well, we're still in a state of flux here. We're still transitioning, and it's going to take a while from the old model of the grid to the new distributed grid, which is inevitable.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, should we go on, Tom, or do you have more?
We got a couple of words to say here.
Okay.
Totally renewable Yakananda's community battery project was just unveiled. Well, you just said that.
Yeah.
It will power up to 40 households.
Okay.
And the town has a goal of reaching 100% renewables by 2022, which is just next year, folks.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
It's one of 4 community-owned and operated microgrids, allowing for the trading and sharing of locally generated renewable energy. It's all part of a plan.
Yeah. And trading and sharing means that people can do this with rooftop solar power that they own. So
Absolutely.
They can,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, our next item is from the BBC, and I should put up a new picture.
Sad.
This picture is a picture of Lytton, British Columbia, which we've talked about.
We talked about it last week.
And the week before. And you can see, if you look closely, that there actually are a few buildings that are still standing. But 90% of the town is gone.
It's gone.
And there's the percentage that is left, most of it is not really livable.
Well, I remember from last week, there was a quote. It said, "Grab your car keys, get in your car, get out of here."
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Yeah, it was pretty much to that effect. I think
it happened so quickly.
Yeah, the town's mayor, or whatever his position was, said that they saw smoke, and 15 minutes later, everything was on fire. And
well,
of course,
let's talk about this one before it turns stale.
Yep. Okay.
U.S.-Canada heat wave, virtually impossible without global warming. We're going to hear that phrase again. It's from the BBC.
Yeah. The searing heat that built up in Western Canada and the United States in June was, quote, virtually impossible, end quote, without climate change, say scientists. An international team of 27 climate researchers who were part of the World Weather Attribution Network did the study, which has not yet been peer-reviewed. I want to point out to people, when scientists decide that something is true or something is likely or whatever, they aren't a bunch of guys who sit in a back room and talk about science while they're smoking cigars, drinking whiskey, and playing cards. This is serious stuff. They are putting their living, getting their living from serious hard work, and it is something that people would find very hard to appreciate if they have never actually seen it in action. So
yeah, they're not screwing around. They're serious guys here.
That's right. This is serious, and people have this kind of glib attitude of, well, it doesn't fit the way I want the world to be, so I'm going to say that it doesn't happen that way. And that's. Do you have more on this?
Away from the article.
Yeah.
Across the region, multiple cities hit new renewable records, far above 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We're talking the west coast of the U.S. and Canada.
Well,
you
yeah, I
can say that the chances of it occurring without human-induced warming would have been 150 times less likely.
Yeah, which is...
Duh.
Yeah, right. This is not likely. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one, if that's right, Tom.
Yeah, what are these things that we're looking at?
I don't know. I know there's some boats in that picture. Man, they are tiny boats.
Yeah, they're pretty far out, huh?
Well, I don't know how big those boats are, but the wind turbines that are there just dwarf the boats. And it's hard to, it's the one in the center, though, the boat looks like it's much closer than the wind turbine. So anyway, this particular item came from the Delaware Business Times.
And it says, I quote, Ørsted announces bid to expand Skipjack Wind Farm.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the Skipjack Farm.
We have. Ørsted announced that it had submitted a bid to the Maryland Public Service Commission to develop Skipjack Wind 2, a proposal that would include 760 megawatts of energy. The Danish multinational green energy company is already developing 12 General Electric Haliade X 12 megawatt turbines off the coast of Ocean City, Maryland. And that first one, as I recall, is in, I might be wrong about this, and you could correct me if I am, and Tom, I think the first one is in Delaware, the 12 that they're building.
Well, Delaware and Maryland come together right there.
Yeah, and this
and Virginia's not very far away.
Yeah, the new one is adjacent to that, but it's in Maryland waters. So
Yeah.
both of these states are benefiting from these wind farms.
Well, this Skipjack 2 could be as much as 6 times the size of Skipjack 1.
Right. So
they're getting serious about this. They figured out how to do it, And I think they've concluded it's a good thing to do.
I think so. Yeah. We're up to Friday, July 9th, and I've got another picture of offshore wind power.
A picture of almost the same.
It might actually be the same wind turbines. I found
Island, and there's only 3 on Block Island, and we're seeing 3. So
we're seeing 3. Block Island has 5.
They got 5. Oh.
Well, there are 5 at Block Island, and I think that one of them is actually kind of sneaked into the structure at the bottom of the nearest wind farm. But I wanted to draw your attention, Tom, to the yellow pipes that come out of the middle of the mast, and they kind of curve over toward the legs and go into the water. I would bet that there are cables in those.
Say this one again.
If you look at the bottom of the wind turbine on the
right,
and you look at the center of that structure, there's 2 like tubes that come snaking out of the bottom, and they're not straight. And I would bet those are for the cables. Yeah,
absolutely.
Anyway, this particular item came from E&E News. What do you have for title?
Maine bans offshore wind from state waters. This is crazy.
Yeah, Governor Janet Mills, who supports offshore wind power, signed a law to permanently bar offshore wind power from Maine waters in a compromise with lobstermen. The ban is the first of its kind in the United States, where fishermen have been among the most strenuous objectors to developing industry. And you know what, Tom? I will bet you that this gets undone in the not very far future. Because,
well, for one thing, it's based on a false premise.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, the actual reality has been that these platforms attract fish
and shrimp. There was a movie there was a movie that who did it? Famous actor. Don't remember, but it was about offshore drilling rigs and the problems they had with shrimp fishermen in Louisiana. And of course, this was like in the 1950s. And they found that the rigs actually attracted shrimp. And the guy told a fisherman, said, "I'm glad I'm talking to you, because how do you get rid of shrimp?" A fisherman was really interested in that question. I just don't think this is going to last.
Takeaway from it is it's my wording. Sort of my wording. It's the politics, stupid.
It's the politics. That's correct, and it's sad, but it is. And the lobster fishermen are having a lot of trouble because the water's warming up and the lobsters are moving north. That hasn't really...
I think we've talked about that.
We have indeed. It hasn't hit Maine hard yet, but it has hit Massachusetts hard, and it's almost ended lobster fisheries in...
It's happening, guys. It's happening.
Yeah, it is.
This is reality.
Okay. Our next story is, it's an automotive story, and that is a picture of a BMW engine, believe it or not.
Sort of partially dismantled.
The cleanest looking engine I've ever seen. This is from CNN. You got a name, a title for it?
Volkswagen and BMW fined $1 billion for emissions cartel.
Yeah, and this was kind of amusing. The European Commission fined Volkswagen Group and BMW $1 billion for colluding with Daimler. How much did they fine Daimler to avoid
I'll mention that.
Oh, good for you, Tom. I'm glad you're on the job here. To avoid competition on nitrogen oxide cleaning technology. This is really reprehensible. This delayed development of the technology that could have reduced harmful emissions from the vehicles. What do you got, Tom?
Well, the German car makers agreed to avoid competing on technology that eliminates nitrogen oxide emissions from diesel.
Yeah.
They fined Volkswagen at $600 million and BMW $400 million, but Daimler was not farmed because they blew the whistle.
Isn't that interesting? They blew the whistle not only on the other two companies, but on themselves.
And on themselves, yeah.
So
in 2015, Volkswagen admitted to rigging millions of diesel engines to make their emissions appear less toxic.
yes,
So they got caught. That's a separate issue.
you know,
On that one.
it makes you wonder, are we ever going?
Why do they do this? They don't have to.
Well, I hate to say it, they do it because they're human, and
yeah, they're greedy.
They're greedy. What can I say? Okay, our next item.
Another one of those funny-looking things.
Yeah, there you go. This is an item from Renews, and you have a title.
Wind and solar growth 50% larger than any time in history.
Yeah.
This is the growth they're talking about.
Right. Wind and solar energy capacity increased by 238 gigawatts in 2020.
What do I always say about gigawatts?
Well, I think you've said they're bigawatts. Is that
That's what I say?
I seem to remember that from some place in my mind. 50% more than any other time in history, according to a report from BP. Now, I want to point out, BP, those are initials for British Petroleum. Okay. Yeah. The 2021 BP Statistical Review of World Energy said that wind, solar, and hydroelectric generation all grew last year, even though the overall energy demand fell. And I should mention that what I'm seeing today is that the coal generation is increasing again. The reason why that happened was because it fell a lot last year, largely because of COVID-19, and it's not going to grow back to what it was in 2019 or anything like that. It is increasing.
That's temporary because the economics are going to take over.
Absolutely. No question about that in my mind.
Well,
okay.
In 2020, the share of renewables in global power generation recorded its fastest ever increase.
Yeah.
And that growth came at the expense of coal-fired generation.
Right. And as a percentage of the total, they could decline. The percentage could decline this year, even if they install more capacity, because of the way percentage figures work.
But it's all about economics.
Yeah. Okay, we are up to Saturday, July 10th, and we have a picture.
We got a picture of a town. I mean, I knew the town existed, but I never knew it looked like that. That looks like New York.
The funny thing about this is when I saw that photograph, Tom, I thought to myself, that's Beirut. You know, I have a pretty good sense of geography, and I have a pretty good memory for photographs and things like that. And I would not have guessed that was Beirut. I just would not.
No, I wouldn't either.
So I think your sense of geography is also pretty good. And it is built up.
A little sleepy fishing village.
Well, Beirut, I think, is the capital of Lebanon, and it's not a tiny village. But yeah, you don't have the sense that it would look like this. And the fact that they've got buildings on the tops of those cliffs, if you look on the left side of this before you see that hairpin turn in the road, kind of next to the hairpin turn, there's a building built on the cliff on the near side of the road. Do you see that?
I see that.
That is amazing. Anyway, we should be talking about the article. This is from the BBC.
Lebanon struck by power cut as major plants shut down.
Yeah, this is sad. Both of Lebanon's two main power plants shut down when they ran out of fuel.
Plunging. I can't believe that. How did they do that?
Yeah, right. Plunging much of the country into a blackout. This is the latest in a crisis that has seen people receive just 2 hours of electricity a day. At the root of the problem is a lack of foreign currency to pay for imported fuel.
Now, this is something I don't understand at all, but I mean, I accept that it's true, but
why does it happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, why does it happen? Why would they not have sufficient currency to keep I mean, this is basically what we're saying here is they don't have enough money to keep their economy going.
Well, reading between the lines, Lebanon's currency is not very valuable.
Yeah.
In order to buy fuel, you have to have U.S. dollars.
Yeah. And so here's a country that doesn't have enough money to pay its power bills. So
as the article says, ships refused to offload fuel before money was transferred to the owner's accounts in dollars.
Yeah. I don't know. This is very sad, but it's happened. And it does tell you something about fossil fuels, I think. There is not security in fossil fuels. So, okay.
And it seems that way, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Well, should it before? It's not that in a not too distant future, people are going to look back and laugh. Back in those days, they used to pay for fuel.
Yeah, right. Okay. Our next item is from CNN, and it's about clear-cut forests. And the picture that we've got is a clear-cut forest.
I have seen these. They don't happen in Vermont.
The law in Vermont allows people to clear cut an amount of a certain area of forest that they own. And that amount, as I recall, is 40 acres, which is a lot. But no, you don't see this happen very often in Vermont. You drive
through the South and you see it a lot.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're cutting. This is what the article's about.
Exactly.
CNN.
How the American South is paying the price for Europeans' green energy.
Yeah, in 2000.
This is a good one. There's a lot of pictures in it, and there's some videos. It's an interesting article.
It's an interesting article. In 2009, the European Union pledged to curb greenhouse gas emissions, urging its member states to shift from fossil fuels to renewables. It classed biomass as a renewable energy source on par.
I argue with that.
Yeah, on par with wind and solar. This incentivized burning a lot of wood that came from America's southern states. And, it's Drax, which is the largest power plant in the UK, went to Georgia and said, we need wood chips or wood pellets or whatever it was that they needed for the Drax plant. And we want to buy your forest falls. And they promised that what they would do would be to buy forest falls and waste lumber and stuff like that. And then when, the push came to shove, they just started cutting whole forests down. And it's, I personally think.
It all up and turn it into pellets.
That's right. I personally think that biomass can be used as a renewable resource if it's used right. And right does not include cutting down forests to generate electricity. It does include, if you've got a well-designed modern wood stove, it could include you're going out into your woodlot and cutting a tree and cutting it up for use in the wood stove. That's a very different thing from this. This is not good.
Well, Burlington Electric is burning wood, and I think they're doing it intelligently.
They have foresters in their employ to make sure that the forests are maintained properly. The
takeaway from the article here is ultimately Europe is not reducing emissions by burning American trees. It's just outsourcing the emissions to the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. To the United States, which shouldn't permit it, I don't think. Anyway, we are, let's see where we are.
Look at Arizona.
Yeah, we have a picture of Arizona. Arizona
pretty arid.
Yeah, it looks pretty arid. Arizona highways is always beautiful, and every time I pick it up, I say, "This is so beautiful. I'm glad I'm not there," because it's hot and it's just too sunny for me. I burn too much in a place like that. This is from CNN,
and what it says is the West is caught in a vicious climate change feedback loop.
Yeah, after climate change fueled a deadly heat wave in the Pacific Northwest in June, historic heat threatens records once again. As temperatures climb into triple digits, the sun will bake out what little moisture there is in the ground, worsening the West's unprecedented drought. And what's happening is
that's the feedback loop.
Everything is dry, so everything gets hotter because it's dry.
And it makes it worse.
And that makes it worse. And there's no rain in the forecast at all for the whole West Coast. This
it doesn't matter that it's cooler at night. It's not enough cooler.
No, yeah, absolutely. And the vegetation is not growing, and it's just, and it's like 99% of the western third of the United States is at least abnormally dry. 94% is in drought or worse.
And as a sideline, we bring you a destructive wildfire season.
Yeah. 60% of the West is in extreme drought, and a third of the West is in worse than extreme drought. Maybe I'm using those figures for California, but it's a third of California is in worse than extreme drought, and they don't have any water coming in the forecast. So it's just going to get worse.
It doesn't look like it's going to change quickly.
No, it's not going to change quickly. Okay, we should probably go on.
Well, we got a nice picture of the Colorado River.
Actually, I made a mistake, or somebody made a mistake when that was labeled Colorado River.
Oh, it's not?
You'll notice that it's labeled for the show River in Colorado. I had it labeled as Colorado River near Fort Collins. And I got an email from a person who lives in Colorado and follows my blog. And that person said, George, Fort Collins isn't on the Colorado River, and it isn't anywhere near. So I didn't find out where this picture was taken, but it is a river in Colorado, and I believe it's a river near Fort Collins, but I don't know which one. I didn't have time to do the research.
One thing for sure, you can bet the parts of the Colorado River look like that.
Yeah, and, there it is. This is not exactly happily running water. This is from CNN. What do you have for titled, Tom?
Last month was the hottest June on record for the lower 48.
Well, guess what? Is that a surprise for you?
No.
No. Heat that set records in the Southwest was followed by heat that smashed records in the Pacific Northwest. Those events converged to make last month the hottest June on record for the lower 48 states. And this is
Canada too, by the way.
What?
And Canada too, by the way.
Canada too, absolutely. The NOAA reported this. The previous hottest June was 2016. It's every year we find these records for the hottest get passed, sometimes by a big amount, and that should, records being broken, that's one thing. Record being broken year after year after year, that's another thing. That's a pattern. A record being broken, that's weather. Records in sequence getting broken, that's climate change. They're not the same. And we've got a problem.
When I was reading these articles in preparation for the show, this one phrase kept popping up.
Yeah.
And I'll put it in the context of a sentence. Scientists reported that the heat wave would have been virtually impossible without the effects of human-caused climate change.
As we heard earlier in the broadcast, and you said
virtually
would come
impossible.
Again. Yeah, virtually impossible. Okay.
What do you want? I'm not talking to you, George. There's
I know.
A cat sitting on my belly.
Well, that's what cats do for a living, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we are up to
Joshua trees there, huh?
We are up to an article from the BBC. If you want to tend the cat, I'll read the title.
Read I can read the title.
Okay, go ahead.
The cat's just sitting here looking at me.
Wondering, well, just, let it listen. It might learn something.
Yeah. U.S. heat wave, California and Nevada brace the record-breaking temperatures. I think we already said that.
We've been talking about this over and over and over again. They just keep getting these record-breaking temperatures because the water's baked out of the earth. There's nothing cooling the earth off, except when the sun's down after dark. But it doesn't cool it off the way that the dark doesn't cool it off the way that normally would. So, it's just getting worse and worse. The extreme heat is building in the West with forecasts of heat-breaking temperatures in California and Nevada. The new heat wave comes after the region experienced the hottest June on record. California's Death Valley recorded a high of 130 degrees on Friday. So, yeah, well, this is what's happening. And it's, as we've been saying, it's not going, there's no way in the forecast for it to get better.
So I'm going to say this sentence again because it comes from a different article.
Yeah.
Same words. The heat wave saw spikes in sudden death and increases in hospital visits for heat-related illnesses. Virtually impossible without climate change.
Virtually impossible. Well, I think a person who can look at the West now and the history of the West in the last 20 years and not see a pattern of worse heat, worse drought, and so forth. I can't. Let me put it this way. I'm not a psychologist. I can't address the question of their sanity. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Our next item is from the Sunday Times. And there is a coal-burning power plant, which was not part of the article, but I put it up. What do you have for title?
Sri Lanka says no more coal power.
Okay, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has shot down setting up any coal power plant, saying he has vowed to shift Sri Lanka toward renewable energy and does not want to be the joke of the world. And I think that is an interesting thing to say because those are his words. The decision put a proposed 300 megawatt extension on the Norach Cholai Lok Vijaya plant in jeopardy. Amazing.
Well, it's interesting to say that because considerable preparatory work has already been done on that plant.
Yes. I don't think they've broken ground, but the preparatory work has been done. And
Rajapaksa plans to generate 70% of Sri Lanka's electricity needs to renewable energy by 2030.
Yeah, and what happens if they commit to a coal burning power plant and they can't pay the bill?
They can't do that.
They're back to what Lebanon is doing, except for one thing, and that is, in the case of Sri Lanka, they get financing from China. And in the past, they had a problem with financing an energy thing. So the Chinese said, you don't have to worry about this. You don't have to pay that bill. We'll just take a harbor. So now China's got a military harbor in Sri Lanka because Sri Lanka couldn't pay the bill.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. A little interesting sideline to history, huh?
This is what I've read, and I think it's most probably true.
It's believable.
Okay, we are up to Monday, June 12th, and we have a picture of a solar array.
And a field and some posies.
What?
And a field and some posies.
Posies. And this particular item is from the Joplin Globe.
If you look at the background, I don't know if that's a transmission line or a couple of turbines.
I have no idea. I couldn't tell. What do you got for? What do you have for title?
Bill helps utilities shutter coal plants and transition to renewable power.
I found this really interesting. Missouri utilities will be able to shutter more coal plants, speeding the transition to renewable energy under a bill signed by the governor of Missouri. The bill allows utilities to refinance debt they issued to build coal plants and close the facilities early without a financial hit. So there you go.
Well, it looks like Kansas is adopting similar legislation.
I noticed that in that article, yeah. And
it says that Missouri utilities are looking at retiring 2 coal plants by 2025. That's like next week, folks.
Yeah, and this is these coal plants tend to be big. So, that's what it is.
Oh, yeah.
Should we go on?
I think so.
We have an article from The Guardian, and that is an old picture of air pollution coming from what looks like a coal-burning power plant. Pretty sure it is. It's got those ramps. And it looks like it's got a pile of coal next to it, too.
Well, it says air pollution, and it's courtesy of the U.S. National Park Service.
Yeah. What do you have for a title for the story?
Clean energy plan would cut emissions and save 317,000 lives.
Okay, a Biden administration plan to force the rapid uptake of renewable energy would swiftly cut greenhouse gas emissions and save hundreds of thousands of lives, a report found. There is growing pressure on the White House to take major action on the climate crisis. I want to point out, we're talking about the lives of 317,000 people that would be cut short if we continue with what we're doing today.
Well, we've mentioned several times on the show that this pollution harms lives. I mean, there's a lot of respiratory illnesses that are developing out of it.
People think that Vermont has got good air, and according to an MIT study, Vermont loses about 300 people to air pollution every year. So
the air that we've got coming from Ohio.
Exactly. And, there used to be a fishing fleet, not a big one, but it would go out in Lake Champlain. It's not there anymore and hasn't been there for over 100 years. Over 100 years, because it was closed down because of pollution that came from the coal-fired power plants and steel mills and so forth that are to the west of us.
Well, in 2030 alone, 9,200 premature deaths would be avoided.
Yeah.
The number of lives saved would be immediate, widespread, and substantial.
Yeah.
And people don't think much about that aspect of air pollution.
Well, Tom, I thought about exactly that when I read this story initially. And, when we were kids, there are areas in this country that were just plain filthy. I mean, you'd go through Pittsburgh. You couldn't go through Pittsburgh and come out the other side without being grimy.
Yeah.
And the same thing was true with areas of New York City. I couldn't go through Gary, Indiana without getting a headache. And that was from steel mills. And I mean, bad headache when I was 10 years old. And the headache I'd get the headache before we even arrived to Gary. If the wind, unless the wind was blowing steadily in one direction, I would get it before we got there. And then it would get worse and worse and worse until we were about 5 miles out the other side if we were going from west to east. And I'd have a headache for the rest of the day because of the bad air in Gary. It was very, very predictable. That's just what it was.
Well, we weren't much aware of that kind of stuff. Now we're aware, but we're not doing enough of it.
Well, I remember, hearing my first grade teacher, second grade teacher, something, talking about how Pittsburgh had passed ordinances that were to be used to address that. And I remember when the Chicago City Council passed an ordinance saying that you could not bring a steam locomotive into Chicago. And I was kind of...
Can't go to New York either.
Yeah, that was, I think, before Chicago. But I was really disappointed when that happened. I loved those steam engines. And
yeah, they were neat.
They were neat. And all of the commuter trains going into Chicago were hauled by steam engines that were of a type that had been in this country since the Civil War. And they were beautiful, huge, monstrous things that were very, very heavy, and they looked very heavy. And they had a mystique to them, both their sound and the action of the pistons and the wheels, the drivetrain, the whole thing. Beautiful machines. But the fact that they're beautiful didn't mean that they weren't killing people. So
unfortunately,
that's right.
Let's move on here. I'll read the title here.
Yeah.
Wildfires rage in western states as temperatures soar.
Yeah, look at that.
This is from the BBC.
Look at that. That is a current wildfire, or was when the article came out from the Truckee Meadows Fire and Rescue people. Wildfires, you read that. In the West, wildfires are raging as a heat wave brought record temperatures. Some communities have been told to evacuate as firefighters struggle to battle blazes in the extreme heat. Fires blocked out interstate power lines, and California residents were told to reduce power use. And I mean, the fact that it was burning out power lines is pretty predictable. But
some of these links are saying the same thing over and over again. Different links, but the same words. I'll quote it.
Yeah.
Firefighters say the air is so dry that much of the water dropped by aircraft to quell the flames evaporates before it reaches the ground.
I'm not surprised.
Las Vegas matched its all-time temperature high of 117 degrees on Saturday.
Yeah.
And here's here's the phrase they repeat: virtually impossible without climate change.
Yeah, well, here we are, and people are still saying that climate change isn't happening, or it doesn't matter,
it's
a hoax. It's and it's sad because they're going to say that until they either figure out that they're wrong, which is a pretty hard thing to do, or I don't know what the or is. Well, we should keep going, I suppose.
Yeah, we get a nice picture of Chicago at night.
Yeah, and that is also one that I just went out and found because I didn't have a good one with the article.
By the way, if you look at that tall building on the left with the twin spires on top,
yeah,
that's how you can tell it's Chicago.
Okay.
That stands out.
Okay.
Climate change is destabilizing the city of Chicago. Who knew?
Yeah, this is from Clean Technica. This almost blew my mind. I was, what? Chicago? And then when you read the article, all right, let me read the synopsis. Chicago is a tribute to the indomitable human spirit that starts with the premise that people are smarter than nature. Where Chicago stands today was once a swamp. Today, climate change changes water levels so much that the city floods much more than if it would have if it were coastal. They're having more problems with sunny day flooding in Chicago than they are in Miami.
They are, and the article goes into that.
Yeah.
This is a 3-minute video, by the way, you might want to look at. It's about the wind and the waves, and it's kind of scary.
Well, this is, a lot of my childhood was spent just west of Chicago in a cornfield. All right, let me be truthful. In a small town that was surrounded by cornfields. And, we were 1 block from the cornfields. And Chicago was a place we went to visit the Museum of Science and Industry and the planetarium and a few other places like that. And it was quite a city. It still is. And the idea that it would be in trouble because of climate change changing the water is almost mind-blowing to me.
Well, the article's interesting. Talks about the Chicago River.
Yeah.
And its effect. And it says here, Chicago is more exposed to the dangers of global warming than cities on the ocean.
Yeah.
Ocean levels change slowly and predictably. And for centuries, the level of Lake Michigan never varied more than a few inches. But in the past decade, the lake starts changing by as much as 6 feet.
This is mind-boggling. It really
Suddenly,
is.
Storm surges are battering buildings.
Yeah, this is really mind-boggling.
And it says it right here. Climate change is the culprit.
Well, what else could be, really? I mean, you can say that it's crazy things always happen. But in this era of climate change, crazy things always happen in specific ways that are related to climate change, things being warmer. And, yes, every once in a while, somebody sets a record low temperature. And every once in a while, there's enough snow in Washington, D.C. to put together a snowball. But that's not proof that climate change isn't happening. And when you have a situation where for every record low you've got 5 record highs, that's not good. And it shows.
I'm going to say this phrase again. It wasn't in this article, but it's in about 3 other ones.
Yeah.
Well, this was virtually impossible without climate change.
I'd have to agree with you there, Tom. Okay, we're going to go on to the next one, which is this is a picture. Whoops. We talked about that. This is a picture of Leonora, which is an area of West Australia called Goldfields Esperance. And we have the article is from H2 View. And what do you have for title?
50 gigawatts renewable energy development is unveiled for Western Australia. By the way, Western Australia is a state.
And it's huge. It's like
it's the biggest. It's about a third of Australia.
About a third of Australia. This is not the same one that the federal government said no to only about.
No, it's in the same state, but it's in a totally different location.
Like 1,000 miles away. What?
Something like that.
Yeah. An international consortium unveiled plans for a 50 gigawatt solar and wind project, which could produce 3.5 million tons, TONNES, so we're talking long tons or metric tons, of renewable hydrogen, or 20 million tons of green ammonia annually. The project is to be built in Western Australia's Goldfields Esperance region. Now, this little picture that we have here is a picture of a town, kind of a pretty town, I think, in the Goldfields Esperance region. I'd like to call your attention to something about this town. You'll notice that there's a bunch of stores here, and I think only 2 of them in near view actually have signs up on their frontage that say what the name is. And that makes me think.
Empty.
Yeah, it makes me think that there's some of the stores in this town are empty. The one that's red on the left side, toward the left side, looks like there may be things in the store windows. So maybe things aren't as bad as they look. And actually, this is a nice looking town. It's clean, but it's in an area where there is an amazing number of ghost towns. This is an area that's called Goldfields because gold was found there, and it didn't quite pan out the way people expected it to. And a bunch of towns were,
That's interesting.
Yeah. So what they're finding now is the international consortium wants to build this.
It's going to be big. 50 gigawatts is gigawatts, baby.
50 gigawatts is big, and the acreage that it covers is roughly 2/3 of the size of the state of Vermont.
Exactly that. It's nearly 6,000 square miles.
This is not, this is not a piddling development. And
well, Australia seems to be hopping on this hydrogen ball.
Yeah.
Hydrogen, ammonia, and there's an opening there. I think they're capitalizing on it.
There is an opening there. Okay. We are up to what? We're up to an article from CNN. We're back to fires in the West. This is the bootleg fire you have a picture of. What do you have for title, Tom?
Western wildfires have burned an area 4 times the size of New York City. By the way, that's a lie.
What?
It's more than that now.
I know it's more than that now. But when I first read that, I thought that can't be possible. They must mean 4 times the size of Manhattan. No, it's not 4 times the size of Manhattan. It's 4 times the size of New York City, all 5 boroughs.
It's almost 5 times now.
Yeah, it's about 5 times. The National Interagency Fire Center says 55 large fires have burned 768,000 acres across 12 states. Now, that's just the 55 largest fires. The acreage, about 12,000 square miles, is about 4 times the size of New York City. So far this year, over 1.8 million acres have burned in 33,491 fires, the NIFC says. This is
1,200 square miles is about half again the size of Windham County.
Yeah.
And since it's now bigger, what they're talking about here is almost all of southern Vermont.
Yeah.
Windham County and Bennington County together.
Yeah. Okay. Should we go on, or do you have more on that?
Well, there's an update. As of Wednesday, 67 large fires have burned more than 918,000 acres. That's about 1,400 square miles, which is nearly 5 times the size of New York City.
Yeah. Okay, we are up to Wednesday, July 14th. Here is a picture of an airplane fighting a wildfire.
It looks like a big hand.
I suppose it does, doesn't it?
It's an airplane fighting a wildfire.
Yeah. This is from CNN. What do you have for title?
Wildfires in California have scorched 3 times more land than in the same period of last year.
This is scarier, I think, than the previous article. California had its worst fire season in 2020, with about 4.1 million acres burned, according to the National Interagency Fire Center. So far this year, fires have burned 142,477 acres in the state. This is 103,588 more than were burned in the same period of last year. So we're burning, the fires in California so far this year are burning acreage that is 3 times as big as it was last year. And last year set the all-time record for the most acres burned. This is frightening.
A quote from the article. The fire season across the West is starting earlier and ending later each year. Climate change is considered a key driver of this trend.
How can people deny that this is happening? I don't get it. I think I know what it is. They have an intense wish for something. And
it's politics.
Well, yeah, but people are doing the politics they are because they've got this wish. They want America to be something that maybe they want America to be the America that they remember, which means that we should go back to 1948 DeSoto's. But what can I say?
That was a nice car, actually.
DeSoto? Yeah, actually it was. It was a nice car. One of the nicest cars to drive I ever had was, what was that? It was American Motors Studebaker. It was a Studebaker.
Studebaker.
I had a Studebaker Lark, believe it or not.
I remember when they first came out and you couldn't tell the front from the back.
Well, this one wasn't that model, but it was the Studebaker Lark. They put a lot of time and attention into making sure that car was comfortable, and it was comfortable. Okay, we should go on. Here is a pic. Do you recognize that, Tom?
I don't, but I was struck by how much the downtowns of all these small towns in Vermont look alike.
Yeah, well, this isn't a small town in Vermont. It's a small town in New Hampshire.
It's in New Hampshire, right?
Which means just on the river. So yeah. It's barely out of Vermont. But
Hangover, New Hampshire.
Hangover, New Hampshire. Okay, this is from the Valley News.
Hanover okays power sourcing plan.
Yeah. And keeps its town manager. In Hanover, New Hampshire, residents overwhelmingly voted in a show of hands to adopt a community power plan during town meeting. The plan gives the municipal officials the ability to contract and bid for energy needs of approximately 2,500 households. And they're going gangbusters after.
This is interesting. Let me read a sentence or two from it.
Please do.
It's interesting. Hanover is the third New Hampshire community to move forward with community power, which allows municipal governments to buy power for residents from alternative sources while still relying on transmission services from traditional providers.
Right.
This plan will allow households and businesses to purchase power from more environmentally friendly sources.
Yeah. This is a system that has appeared in other places and it works.
Yeah, what's the town in nearby Massachusetts that's doing exactly this?
Greenfield has been doing this for years.
That wasn't what I was thinking of, but I'll buy it.
Okay.
I mean, people are coming up with better ideas, and they're working.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a bunch more towns in New Hampshire, and the town manager told me that she believed that this would serve as an example for more towns, because it drives down the utility bills and it switches people to renewable energy. And there's no penalty in this. There's no place you can look at it and say there's a potential for a problem here. Okay, one
of the things that it's doing is utilities are saying, well, you can do that all you want to, but you can't use our lines. And they're saying, while still relying on transmission services from traditional providers.
Yeah.
So they've cut that loophole.
Yes, they have. Well, these are things that involve legislation. There was legislation that was needed in New Hampshire to do this. And another thing. That's a good
idea, basically.
Well, I think as I look at the way energy is developing in the United States, I really think those transmission lines are going to kind of drop out of sight at some point in the not terribly distant future.
Well, the model is changing.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be necessary anymore.
I believe you're absolutely
right.
Right.
Distributed power generation instead of one or two giant sources.
Yeah, and that means we will have far, far, far more reliable energy, and it will be in the hands of local communities and individuals.
Bingo.
And I think that it's going to provide local business, local employment. There's a lot to be said for this. And
well, the current grid that we're using was developed during the 1920s.
Yeah, and now the DOE has started a new plan. We'll talk about it next week. It came out today. I had it in my blog today, that they want to drop the cost of battery power by 90%. In 10 years.
Technology is going to help them because it's moving very rapidly.
That's right. Okay, we are at our last issue, our last article, and this is from the Weather Channel.
World at peak fossil fuel generation as emerging markets adopt renewables.
This is electric generation by fossil fuels has peaked worldwide as emerging markets turn to low-cost renewables, according to a report published by India's Council on Energy Environment and water and financial think tank Carbon Tracker. I'm going to disagree with them. I think this year it's probably going to go up worldwide, but that's because we're recovering from COVID-19, which has nothing to do with energy generation, really, except that it means that demand will go up faster than the infrastructure supporting it.
Well, the article says that countries currently importing coal and gas have powerful incentives to switch to solar and wind.
Yeah.
And my comment on that is money talks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw that earlier in the program when we were talking about Sri Lanka and the president saying that they didn't want to look like fools. Okay.
Renewables are already the cheapest source of new electricity in 90% of the world.
And the cost is simply going to go down because of Wright's Law. Okay, we are at the end of our rope, as they say. Okay, the end of the program. And we're wishing everybody to have
some good stuff.
We did. We're wishing everybody to have a downright upbeat week.
The cat's gone, so it's going to be just me.
So Tom is waving.
Gone, so it's going to be just me waving.
Yep. Tom is waving, I am waving, and the cat is not waving. Have a downright upbeat week, and we hope you come back next week. We are hoping next week to do the show from the BCTV studio. And of course, if that happens, then you will be seeing our you can always kind of blank our faces from the screen if you want with your hands. Okay? No?
Okay.
Okay. See you next time.
I can see us, are you here?
Yeah, that's right. Bye.